Free Caitlin Clark. Free Caitlin Clark out of the Indiana Fever prison where she is on lockdown by Stephanie White and Kelsey Mitchell. Kelsey won't pass the ball. Stephanie White icing me out of the games. Free Caitlin Clark. Let me out. Let me out. Free Caitlin Clark, man.
When you hear the chant, "Free Caitlin Clark," echoing through packed arenas and lighting up your social media feed, I need you to understand something right from the start. This isn't some throwaway internet joke that people are laughing about from their couches. The people shouting this are genuinely, deeply frustrated. They're watching something unfold on the court that they believe is...
Man, the Indiana Fever just got smoked. You got smoked by the Atlanta Dream. We just got smoked by 20. Angel Reese just beat Caitlin Clark 2 times in a row. In a row. Free Caitlin Clark from this prison, this jail cell. That is the Indiana Fever Clown Show organization. Caitlin Clark was on a heater. The girl should have had 40 and she got iced out by Stephanie White and Kelsey Mitchell.
Fundamentally wrong, and they're not staying quiet about it. The question everyone's asking right now is simple but loaded. What exactly is happening inside the Indiana Fever organization that's got their most talented player feeling trapped? This chant didn't come out of nowhere. It didn't start because fans were bored or looking for drama to...
Beginning of the second quarter, she starts on the bench and it turns into the Kelsey Mitchell show. Dun, 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 dun. That's Kelsey Mitchell dribbling, never passing a damn ball, never looking to pass it. And Stephanie White iced Caitlin Clark out of the game. Make no mistake about it. Caitlin Clark was whipping up a pot of something to start this game out. In the kitchen, 4 burners, 4 stove burners, all lit up, something put in the oven. She was whipping up a pot of something and whipping up some dessert for us as well. And Stephanie White came in and ruined it. Kelsey Mitchell.
Create. It started because something real is happening, something visible on the court, something that doesn't make sense when you're watching it unfold in real time. And that's what makes this different from your typical social media outrage cycle. The frustration has teeth, it has evidence, and it's not going away until someone actually addresses what's causing it. So to understand...
Monique Billings. We're giving Monique Billings $800,000. Again today, Monique Billings played 13 minutes and had 7 points. $800,000. 13 minutes, 8 points. Lexi Hall, 16 minutes, not a single basket. I'm sorry, mama. I can't argue it. I can't defend it. I don't know what the hell is going on. This whole thing is a travesty.
To understand this movement, we need to rewind to a specific night that changed everything and showed everyone exactly what they're worried about. June 20th, 2026. The Indiana Fever walk into State Farm Arena in Atlanta with serious expectations. This is supposed to be their statement moment, their chance to prove that they belong at the top of this league. The building is packed to the rafters, the energy is electric, and then everything falls apart in ways that nobody saw coming. Atlanta's dream doesn't just beat Indiana that night.
Before going further, if you're enjoying this video, don't forget to smash that subscribe button. It really helps us keep bringing you the content you love. Share this video with your friends so they don't miss out on all the drama and excitement.
Points. Angel Reese shot 50%, 18 points, 8 rebounds. I don't want to hear none of y'all talk crazy about Angel Reese. Angel Reese and Naz Hillman outplayed our $6 million center, Aaliyah Boston, 2 games in a row. Angel Reese and Naz Hillman outplayed Aaliyah Boston back-to-back games. You giving Aaliyah Boston $6 million. Aaliyah Boston is missing layups. Aaliyah Boston is out here shooting all these threes. Aaliyah Boston, you got outplayed by Angel Reese and Naz Hillman and back-to-back.
Absolutely demolished them. Final score, 113-96. But here's the thing that's got everyone losing their minds. That lopsided number doesn't even tell the real story of what actually happened on that court. Because if you just looked at that scoreline and nothing else, you might think Indiana was never in this game at all. You might think they got outmatched from the opening tip. But that's not what happened. And that's exactly why this loss stings so much worse than a typical blowout. Indiana came out absolutely fine.
And Caitlin Clark, I gotta be real, that third quarter was disgusting. You had 5 turnovers. I don't even know, 3 of them, you just threw the ball out of bounds. I don't know what was going on with Caitlin Clark in that third quarter with the turnovers. You had 5 turnovers. That was ridiculous. I wanted to see Caitlin Clark keep her pedal to the metal and stay aggressive. I felt like she could have went for 40 tonight and led the Indiana Fever to victory, but part of it is she's iced out by Kelsey Mitchell dribbling and dribbling and dribbling.
Firing in that first half. We're talking about nearly 80% shooting from the floor. That's elite-level offensive execution. Caitlin Clark was hitting everything she touched, particularly from three-point range where she went a perfect 3 for 3 to start the game. You could feel the momentum building. The Fever held a solid 59-56 lead going into halftime, and it felt like they had control of this.
This roster is worse than the roster was Caitlin Clark's rookie year. 80% of the league was free agents, and this is what Amber Cox and Kelly and Stephanie White came up with. I can't believe this shit. I can't believe it, man. I'm mind blown by what the Indiana Fever have done with this team. I'm mind blown by what they've done with this team.
It felt like they should have had control of this thing. But then the second quarter happened, and this is where the real drama begins to unfold in a way that nobody can ignore. Caitlin Clark comes off the bench, and immediately something changes in the game's rhythm. Kelsey Mitchell steps up and essentially takes over the entire offensive flow. Now Mitchell signed a massive $1.4 million supermax
in the Atlanta Dream for the second straight time. For the second straight time. This is bad. This is bad. Something needs to happen. Either trade Caitlin Clark or get rid of Stephanie White and Kelsey Mitchell. Something's got to give. Get down in the comments. Let me know what y'all think. This is Keep the Vision.
Contract extension to be here, so the organization needs her to produce. But what unfolded was something different entirely. Mitchell was dribbling, just continuously holding the ball without moving it around. The ball movement stops. The offensive flow stops. And as this happens in real time, that hard-earned lead that Indiana built just evaporates into thin air. The momentum completely shifts. The energy that was there is gone. And Clark, the player who started this game absolutely scorching hot, found herself increasingly sidelined from the offensive action. Instead of getting the ball in rhythm and continuing to attack, she's standing on the perimeter watching Mitchell control the pace. And here's what makes this infuriating for fans. This wasn't some random substitution pattern that happened once. This became a documented, repeatable behavior that fans started noticing right away. It's not just one isolated incident where a coach makes a questionable choice. It's a pattern, a consistent pattern, and it's not just this game either. Fans started noticing a pattern where Clark would be pulled from games right when the Fever were building momentum, only to watch that lead crumble the moment she sat down. The most famous example happened back in late May during a game against Portland. The broadcast cameras caught a visibly intense moment between Clark and head coach Stephanie White on the sideline. Two were clearly in a heated exchange, and seconds later White pulled Clark out of the game completely and inserted rookie Raven Johnson. That footage went viral immediately across every platform you can think of. And ever since that moment, the question of whether Stephanie White is deliberately freezing out her generational franchise player has become absolutely impossible to ignore. The timing of it made it worse. Right after the confrontation, immediately, boom, Clark's out. Raven Johnson's in. That's not a coincidence that fans were willing to overlook. That's a moment that got locked into people's minds. This is a head coach benching her biggest star right after they visibly argued. What else are people supposed to think when they see that happen? So the question started spreading across social media, across sports talk, across every basketball forum you could find. Is Stephanie White sabotaging Caitlin Clark? Is there some sort of power struggle happening? Is there conflict between them that's manifesting on the court? These aren't crazy questions. These are reasonable questions based on visible evidence. But before we go too deep into the conspiracy angle, let's actually talk about who Stephanie White is, because this is where context matters. This isn't some unknown coach that the Fever just hired randomly. White successfully took the Connecticut Sun to 3 straight playoff semifinals. She's the exact same coach who led the Indiana Fever to their last major WNBA Finals appearance all the way back in 2015. She has a championship pedigree. She knows basketball. She knows how to win, and her resume speaks for itself. And here's what's interesting. When that viral moment happened with Clark, when everyone was losing their minds about it online, her own veteran players actually stepped up and defended her. Lexi Hall went to the media and directly stated that in competitive basketball, frustrations naturally rise. Fast-paced coaching decisions have to happen on the fly. She said it wasn't some deep personal feud between the coach and the star player. It was just basketball. Even Clark herself, sitting at the absolute center of this controversy, basically shrugged and said, "It's my life. I'm used to it." She didn't confirm the conspiracy. She didn't say the coach was against her. She just acknowledged that this kind of thing is part of her reality now. So you can't just dismiss White as some rogue coach trying to sabotage her own team. That doesn't fit with her history, her resume, her track record, or what the people inside the building are saying. But that doesn't mean her rotation decisions are working either. Those are two different things. You can have respect for a coach and still think her substitution patterns are hurting the team. You can acknowledge her championship experience and still question why she keeps making the same decisions that backfire. Both of those things can be true at the same time. And yet the second Atlanta game happened. The one on that Saturday night we mentioned earlier. And in that game, something genuinely inexplicable occurred in terms of player usage and game management. Let's break down the actual statistical reality here because this is where numbers don't lie. Monique Billings, who the Fever paid $800,000 to sign during the offseason, played exactly 13 minutes and scored 7 points. That's it. $800,000 for essentially a non-factor in a crucial game. Lexi Hall couldn't find the bottom of the net to save her life. Neither of these players was a disaster on a bad night. They just didn't play enough to matter, or they played and couldn't execute. And when hosts and analysts get on the air and call this situation a complete travesty, they're not exaggerating based on feelings. They're pointing at actual, documented statistical failure. The front office made specific financial commitments to specific players, and on the biggest stage, those players either didn't get the opportunity to contribute or they got the opportunity and couldn't deliver. That's not opinion. That's fact. The Fever front office spent historic, record-breaking money to assemble this roster. They told everyone who would listen that Caitlin Clark finally had elite veteran help around her. They promised that this was a championship-caliber team. They went to the media with bold statements about what they'd built. And yet here we are, 16 games into the season, sitting at 9 wins and 7 losses. That's not championship basketball. That's not even solid playoff basketball yet. That's mediocre basketball masquerading as a powerhouse team. And then they got blown out by the exact same team they already lost to just 3 days earlier. This wasn't just a loss. This was a franchise record-setting scoring explosion that happened right in front of a sold-out crowd. The Dream put up 113 points. The Fever defense completely collapsed. The gap between expectation and reality is massive, and everyone in Indianapolis can feel it. Now let's talk about the player everyone thought was going to be the long-term anchor of this franchise. Aaliyah Boston just signed the single largest contract in WNBA history. We're talking a 4-year, $6.3 million deal with a $1 million base salary for this season alone. That's the kind of money you give to a player you're building your entire organization around. That's generational money. That's franchise player money. And on that Saturday night against Atlanta, she finished with 13 points and 9 rebounds. Now, that's a respectable line if you're a solid rotational player coming off the bench. A 13-9 night is fine for a backup center. But when you're supposed to be the undisputed franchise centerpiece commanding that kind of historic money, that production is simply not enough, especially not on a national television stage. And especially not when you're playing on the same court as Angel Reese, who just dominated you for the second straight time. Think about that contrast for a second. The organization invested historic money into Boston, and they keep getting out-rebounded and out-produced by a player on a team that seems to be figuring things out while Indiana is struggling to figure things out. That's not a coincidence. That's not bad luck. That's a fundamental mismatch between expectations and reality. It's a mismatch between what the organization paid for and what they're actually getting on the court. And that's on the front office, not on Boston as a player. But it's still a massive problem. And that's exactly what happened against Boston. Angel Reese went off for 18 points and 8 rebounds. She's currently leading the entire WNBA in rebounding. Let that sink in for a second. She's leading the entire league. She's the best rebounder in professional women's basketball right now. And she just became the fastest player in league history to reach 1,000 career rebounds, hitting that milestone in just her 79th career game. That's an incredible historic achievement. Meanwhile, Aaliyah Boston, the most expensive player in WNBA history, got outplayed by her in back-to-back games. Not just outplayed, out-rebounded, out-produced, out-executed. Think about what that means for the Indiana organization. They invested the most money they've ever spent on a single player. That player is supposed to be the foundation of the franchise, and she's consistently getting beaten by a player on the opposing team. That's not a one-off bad game. That's a trend. That's a pattern. And patterns matter in basketball because they tell you something about competitive level and chemistry and all the intangible things that money can't necessarily buy. Boston is a genuinely talented basketball player. She's good. She's skilled. She's athletic. But right now, she's not playing like the most expensive player in WNBA history. She's just playing like a good player on a struggling team. What makes this even more interesting is looking at what Atlanta is doing right now. The Dream are sitting near the top of the standings with an impressive 11-4 record. Their team chemistry is working perfectly. Angel Reese looks comfortable, confident, and dominant on both ends of the floor. They're executing. They're moving the ball. They're winning close games and blowing out teams. They're setting franchise records against Indiana, one of the teams that was supposed to be better than them. They have a system that's clicking on all cylinders, and the Indiana organization can sit in their offices and nitpick their own coaching decisions all they want. They can analyze their rotations and debate their substitution patterns until they're blue in the face. But the harsh reality is that their rival has built something that works, and Indiana has not. That's the uncomfortable truth that nobody in the Fever locker room wants to confront. They spent more money. They have more talent. They have a generational player in her prime. And they're losing to a team that's executing better, playing together better, and winning games. That's what success looks like. And that's what Indiana isn't doing right now. The Dream have figured out their identity. They know what they are. They know how to play together. Indiana is still searching for that. And when you're searching while another team is already executing, that other team is going to beat you. Every single time. But here's something really important that we need to address, and this is where we have to be fair about the whole situation. Caitlin Clark didn't play a perfect game that night. In the third quarter specifically, she had 5 turnovers. 5. And 3 of them were just throws out of bounds. That quarter was genuinely difficult to watch if you're an Indiana fan. She could have potentially gone for 40 points and led the Fever to victory. She had that potential. She started the game scorching hot. But instead, she was making careless mistakes right when the team needed her most. And when the Atlanta Dream tightened their defensive screws coming out of halftime in that third quarter, literally nobody on the entire Indiana roster could stop the bleeding. This wasn't just coaching staff failure. This wasn't just substitution decisions going wrong. This was a complete systemic collapse from top to bottom. Everyone was struggling. Everyone was making mistakes. Indiana committed 29 personal fouls that night. 29. They turned the ball over 19 times total. Atlanta turned all those mistakes into 20 easy fast break points. That's not just one person's fault. That's an entire team falling apart simultaneously. And this is where we need to acknowledge something that the angriest fans on social media conveniently skip over. When a whole team is committing that many fouls and that many turnovers, when nobody on the entire roster can step up and stop a third quarter breakdown, when the defense is so undisciplined that they're just hacking away, that's a team problem, not just a coaching problem or a single player problem. Yes, the substitution decisions are real. Yes, the rotation patterns are real and documented on film. Yes, it looks strange when Clark gets pulled while the team has a lead and then the lead disappears. But to jump from the coaching decisions look questionable to the head coach is deliberately sabotaging her franchise player is a massive leap that requires actual proof. And that proof doesn't actually exist anywhere. What does exist is frustration. What does exist is documented video of a bench argument. What does exist is a repeating pattern of early substitutions. But what doesn't exist is any kind of direct evidence that White is intentionally trying to hurt Clark's career or tank her performance. The players themselves keep saying there's nothing like that happening. The coaching staff keeps saying there's nothing like that happening. But the pattern is there. The decisions are questionable. And sometimes you can have both of those things true at the same time. You can have a coach making decisions that seem deliberately sabotaging without that coach actually trying to sabotage anything. Sometimes the road to disaster is paved with good intentions and bad rotations. Now, there's something else we need to address because there was actually a weird conspiracy theory floating around after this game that we need to put to bed right here, right now. Some fans were pointing out that legendary coach Don Staley was physically present in the building that night, watching from courtside. And some people were suggesting that somehow this meant Raven Johnson was getting playing time because of Staley. That somehow Staley had influence over the Fever's rotation. Let me be extremely clear about something. That's an absolute reach. That's the kind of conspiracy thinking that sounds interesting until you actually think about it for 5 seconds. Dawn Staley is the head coach at South Carolina. Yes, she coached Raven Johnson in college. They have a history together. Johnson came from that program. But on that Saturday night, Staley was literally just sitting courtside as a casual spectator, hanging out next to several prominent NBA players who also came down to watch a good matchup. This happens all the time in the WNBA. Coaches come watch games. Other athletes come watch games. It's just basketball fans enjoying basketball. Dawn Staley does not secretly run the Indiana Fever front office from the stands. She does not control their game rotations. She doesn't have some hidden influence over coaching decisions. Raven Johnson gets minutes because the actual coaching staff in the building makes the decision to put her in the game. If you want to criticize the rotation choices, if you want to question why a rookie is getting minutes that could go to Clark, criticize the actual coaching staff inside the arena who are physically making those substitution calls. But don't create entire conspiracy theories about college coaches secretly controlling WNBA franchises from the stands. That's just not how this works. So where does all of this actually leave us? Well, the cold hard facts are not looking very kind to the Indiana organization right now. The massive amounts of money they spent to build this roster are completely real. The string of blowout losses they keep racking up are completely real. The sloppy turnovers that plague them every single night are completely real. And those controversial substitution decisions that keep happening over and over are also very real and deeply frustrating for the fan base. But here's what's important to understand about Caitlin Clark specifically. Clark is playing under a media microscope that no other athlete in the history of this league has ever had to face before. Think about that. No other player in WNBA history has ever had this level of scrutiny. Every decision the team makes, every substitution, every rotation choice, it gets dissected and analyzed and turned into a national news story. Earlier this season, Clark was a late scratch with a back injury, and the way the team's PR staff handled that announcement was so messy and confusing that the league office actually issued a formal warning to the organization for their sloppy injury reporting protocols. That would have been a complete non-story for any other player. Just another player out with an injury. Move on to the next game. But because Clark is who she is, because of her star power and her arrival into the league, it became a massive deal. Everyone wanted to know what was going on. Everyone had theories. The team couldn't control the narrative, and Clark herself has admitted that dealing with this relentless level of media scrutiny is just her daily reality now. She can't escape it. She can't have a bad game without it becoming a national story. She can't have a benching without it becoming conspiracy theory material. She can't have a heated moment with her coach without the entire internet analyzing it frame by frame. That's an insane amount of pressure to put on any player, especially a young player just starting her professional career. So when you step back and really evaluate what's happening here, you start to realize that some of what looks from the outside like a uniquely toxic, deeply dysfunctional team environment is actually just an ordinary, highly competitive rough patch. It's a rough patch that happens to hundreds of teams, but this rough patch is playing out under a blinding media spotlight that absolutely no one else in the sport currently has to deal with. The tension is real. The frustration is real. The underperformance is real. But the idea that there's some sort of secret conspiracy to sabotage Clark, that's the part that doesn't hold up when you actually look at what the people involved keep saying. And yet, here's what nobody can dispute. This team is not performing at the level it should be. The chemistry is not there yet. The coaching decisions, whether well-intentioned or not, are not working. The expensive roster that was supposed to solve all of Indiana's problems has instead created new problems. The front office spent money like they were building a championship team, and instead they built a team full of talented players who don't know how to win together yet. That's the real story. Not some grand conspiracy, just a fundamental failure to build a cohesive unit despite having all the individual pieces. This happens in sports. You can have great individual players. You can have a coach with a championship resume. You can have all the money in the world, and it can still not work because of chemistry, because of fit, because of how the pieces interact with each other. Sometimes talented players just don't play well together. Sometimes a coach's system doesn't match the players she has. Sometimes expectations and reality just don't align no matter how much money you throw at the problem. That's what's happening here. And it's frustrating because it should be working. By all accounts, it should be working, but it's not. The uncomfortable reality for Indiana is that they're watching their rival Atlanta Dream figure things out while they're still figuring things out. The Dream have better chemistry. The Dream have better execution. The Dream are winning games they should be winning. Indiana keeps losing games they should be winning. And when you're spending historic money and losing to teams with less financial investment, when you're losing to teams that were supposed to be your inferior rival, that's when you know something is seriously wrong. Not wrong in the sense of some conspiracy. Wrong in the sense of fundamental organizational failure. So the question becomes, what happens next? Does something actually give here? Does the front office make a major change? Does the coach adjust her rotation? Does the team somehow find a way to click together despite all the dysfunction? Or does this spiral continue deeper into the season until everyone's forced to admit that this whole offseason experiment was a massive failure? Because right now, the Indiana Fever are at a crossroads, and whatever decision they make in the coming weeks could fundamentally change the trajectory of this franchise for years to come. Think about it from the front office perspective for a second. You're sitting in that office. You've just spent historic money. Your team is underperforming on national television. Fans are creating social media movements to free your franchise player. You're the general manager and you have some really difficult decisions to make. You have 3 possible paths forward and they're all different. Path 1, you could fire Stephanie White. You could publicly admit that this offseason hire didn't work out. You could start the coaching search all over again and try to find someone who can manage this roster better. That's a huge decision. It's admitting failure. It's admitting that you made a mistake in bringing in a coach with a championship resume. Path 2, you could keep the coach but demand fundamental changes. You could tell her to completely rebuild the entire offensive system to revolve exclusively around Caitlin Clark. You could tell her to take the ball completely out of Kelsey Mitchell's hands and make Clark the undisputed focal point of every offensive possession. You could say, we didn't pay historic money just to have our franchise player reduced to a role player. You could force a system change without changing the coach. Path 3, you could tell everyone to be patient. You could argue that a brand new expensive roster that's only 16 games into their first season together simply needs more time to gel and figure out their chemistry. You could say that this is exactly the kind of rough patch that new teams go through, and that given time, the talent will eventually win out. Those are 3 fundamentally different directions, and they lead to 3 completely different outcomes. And right now, the Indiana Fever front office seems caught between all 3 of them, unable to commit fully to any single path. The reality is that the pressure isn't going to stop anytime soon. The Fever have to turn right back around and host the Phoenix squad under the bright lights on Monday night. Meanwhile, Atlanta will be hosting Toronto on that same Monday night as they look to keep their momentum rolling. The relentless schedule doesn't stop for anyone to catch their breath. There's no break. There's no pause. There's no time to regroup and figure things out. You have to get back out there and play, and you have to try to win. And the pressure surrounding this underperforming franchise is only going to get worse if they keep losing. And because of that reality, the massive pressure surrounding this underperforming franchise isn't going anywhere. It's not going to get better. It's not going to fade away. Every loss compounds it. Every disappointing performance adds to it. And the free Caitlin Clark chant that started after that Atlanta game, that's not going away either. As long as the team keeps losing, as long as the rotations keep looking questionable, as long as the chemistry keeps being absent, the fans are going to keep pushing back. And rightfully so. They invested emotionally in this team. They got told this was a championship roster. And now they're watching it underperform night after night. Here's the thing that everyone needs to understand. When you have this much raw talent in the building, this much money invested, and the team continues to struggle this badly, something massive eventually has to break. That's not speculation. That's just reality. You can't keep losing like this. You can't keep disappointing fans like this. You can't keep wasting this much money like this without something giving. The very angry sports host who started this whole conversation was right about that. The only real question looming over the front office right now is what exactly that breaking point is going to be. Is it a coaching change? Is it a roster change? Is it a system change? Is it all 3? But something is definitely coming because you have a generational talent in Caitlin Clark. You have elite-level players around her. You have a coach with a championship resume. You have historic money invested. And none of it is working. That's a unique situation. That's a problem that requires a solution. And the solution isn't going to be, let's just wait and see if it gets better. That's not a real strategy. That's giving up. That's hoping for luck. And the Fever front office doesn't have the luxury of hoping anymore.